This video is going to introduce you to some of the concepts that we'll be exploring in the geographic assignment, and then it's going to guide you through how to complete that assignment. We're going to start off talking a little bit about different types of geospatial data. Geospatial refers to, in the field of geography, data that has some sort of geography built into it. And what we usually mean by that is that there's some sort of data, and that data is linked to a coordinate system that allows it to be mapped. These sorts of data come in a couple of different forms. The major forms are data that are called vector data, that I'll talk about later on in the course, and something that's called raster data. Raster data is what you're going to be using in this particular assignment. And it's actually something that you already probably know a little bit about, but you haven't really thought about it before as raster-based geospatial data. Raster data is data, or are data, that are continuous over some part of the Earth, which means that instead of it being a bunch of little points or a bunch of lines, it covers an area like an image covers an area. It's broken into pixels, and you've heard that term pixel before when referring to a photograph and how detailed a photograph is. Well, that term pixel can also be applied directly to geospatial raster data. Google Earth, for example, is built mostly of raster data, not entirely, but a large portion of it is. The pictures that we see on Google Earth are satellite images, and those satellite images, some of them are aerial photography as well, but both of these images and photographs are essentially built of raster data, essentially photographs or what's called remotely sensed data, data that comes from a satellite that allows us to see a picture of the world. And if you zoom down close enough in those satellite images, just like if you zoom down close enough in one of your photographs, you will find that it's made of little tiny pixels of color. But in the case of raster data, each of those pixels is linked to a very specific location on Earth, a geographic coordinate. Sometimes that's expressed in latitude and longitude, but not always. In addition to Google Earth being made of images, Google Earth is also made of what's called height data. Height data refers to satellite-sensed data that tells us what the elevation of the surface of the Earth is. And that's used to produce the three-dimensionality that we see on Google Earth that the images are then draped over the top of, or layered over the top of. Layering of data is a very important part of geographic data. In fact, geographic information systems, of which Google Earth is sort of a light form of a GIS, all use layers of data that can be analyzed together or viewed together. Here's a little image, or a couple little images, all from one of the major companies that works in geographic information systems, that number one shows how a pixeled raster image works. You can see here a picture of maybe a building and a road and a river, but if you zoom down into an area, you'll see that the data comes from each of these little geospatial cells or pixels of data that are coded in one color or another color. If this is done finely enough and over a large area based on satellite data, it can become a picture of the planet, as this is right here. There can also be height data, and here's an image that shows sort of that height data. The height data usually comes in a form that when we visually see it is black and white, but it doesn't look as cool as one that has been colored like this. Those layers all get layered so that we can view and understand the world and also solve geographic problems as well. So raster data is used for all sorts of different things in geography. A couple of examples include estimating populations in an area. And those could be populations of humans or of animals or whales based on data and the types of things that can be seen in a pixel and how fine those pixels are. It's often used in transportation planning. for understanding where roads go, how distances are related to topographic barriers, for example. It's frequently used in hydrology, or figuring out how water flows and collects in lakes and ponds on the surface of the Earth. And as I've already described, it's used to understand terrain and to analyze terrain. If you use an app that tells you if there is an area you're hiking or skiing or snow machining in that is avalanche prone, that avalanche prone data is usually derived from raster data. One of the really big uses of raster data is in natural resources, where satellite imagery can be used to try to understand land cover, or what sort of vegetation there is in an area, or how it's being used by humans for urban development or agriculture or whatever. We can study land cover, use, and change over time, and measure environmental impacts, and see how they relate to things like agriculture, forestry, mining, whatever. It's just a hugely important geospatial tool, and it's something that Google Earth gives us great access to, and that you're going to be using as well to do a little empirical studying and mapping of an area on your own. In the story map material in this module, I've already stressed the problems of deforestation in Latin America and how important it is, and all the different things that it's related to as well. In this assignment, you're going to take that knowledge that you have about Latin America and deforestation, and you're going to put it together with some remotely sensed layers of data to explore deforestation a little bit on Google Earth. I'm going to ask you in the assignment to download 2 layers of data that should be on the assignment. They are going to be found as what are called KML or KMZ files, and you should put them someplace like on your desktop. That's where I have mine stored right now. And then once you open Google Earth, which I'm going to do here in a second, you can open those images up and you can use them to see forest change over 2 25-year periods in a part of the Amazonian rainforest, an area that gets a lot of attention because of deforestation. You're then going to use information that you now know about from the story map and compare that to what you can see to try to speculate a little bit about the patterns of deforestation that you see and why you think these changes have happened so dramatically over the last 50 years. When you're done with looking at this, I want a short essay with 2 parts, one in which you describe what you see and how you think what you see on the ground can be linked to what you've learned about deforestation. And then I want you to reflect a little bit on the importance of this remotely sensed raster imagery to understand resources and how they change over time from an empirical worldview. You also have to provide me with just one screenshot from Google Earth this time, but in that screenshot, I want you to demonstrate that you are able to use the layers and that you did in fact use the layers. Make sure, as always, that you examine the assignment rubric so you hit everything and get a really good grade. So I'm going to pause this for a second. I'm going to set up Google Earth so you can see what you're supposed to do. All right, Google Earth is up, and hopefully I'm going to get this right. I have opened it up, and it just went to the last place that I went to. If you go, you might end up actually in this place. That's absolutely fine. All you want to do is just hit make a new map project. And I'm just going to click new map project. Don't do any import yet. And once it brings the view of Google Earth, wherever you are up, and I'll zoom out here a little bit and move it over here, you want to say File, and then you want to open a local KML file. And when it does that, you'll have to search for wherever you put your file. Mine's on my desktop, so I'm just going to click on that. And then you'll see it should take you right down to the area that we are taking a look at. And this is an area that has seen a great deal of deforestation. And what I've done is I've uploaded onto the map 1975 data that was taken from an American satellite. It's not nearly as detailed as what you're able to see, but it allows us to make some really interesting comparisons between how things looked 50 years ago and what they look like now. You can click a layer off and on by turning the eye off and on like this. Now, we can add another layer of data if we want to. So I'm going to open another KML file, and I'm going to bring in the 2001 data. And now we can turn that off and on as well. In fact, we can bring these layers up and make comparisons, and that's exactly what I want you to do. Compare 1975 to 2001 to what you see right now. And that is what I want you to use to explore the problem of deforestation and think about the patterns that you see in the deforestation that is taking place in this area. Let me remind you that you need to have at least one screenshot that shows one of these KML files open so that you can demonstrate to me clearly that you understand how to do this and how to use these tools so that later on we'll be able to use similar tools. So that's all. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you might have about any assignment, make extra videos. Please feel free to reach out if you need to.